Thanks for joining us today on Market Call. I'm Marella Fernandez. Rick Rule on the show today, President and CEO of Rule Investment Media. He'll take your questions on natural resource stocks. Here's how to reach us today. 1-855-326-6266. If you'd like to dial in, you can send your email as well. Market Call at bnnbloomberg.ca. Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Marella, thank you for having me on.
What's your take on the U.S. move to run Venezuela and how the outlook for oil could change as a result?
Boy, what a big question. First of all, I think it bears understanding that while the United States extricated Maduro and his wife, and I won't comment on the ethics of that, we haven't changed the government of Venezuela particularly. The Chavistas or the people around Maduro still control the mechanism of the state, and they also still control many local and regional governments. So to suggest that regime change has occurred is probably premature. I'm not saying that the U.S. can't cause this to occur, but I suggest that the process of asserting U.S. control in Venezuela, if it is going to progress, has just started. I think people need to pay attention to that. There is zero doubt that if the United States were to get control of the reins of power in Venezuela, that could begin to change the dynamic of the world oil market, and that would impact Canada over time, as the Canadian heavy sour crudes, the Athabasca oil sands, as an example, compete directly with some of the Venezuelan crudes. In fact, it was Venezuelan and Mexican crudes, heavy sour crudes, that fueled the U.S. Gulf Coast refining business and led to such demand for Canadian crudes. It's also worth noting that there are substantial abilities in conventional oil and gas in the Maracaibo Basin, opportunities that have occurred precisely because Venezuela hasn't elected to make sustaining capital investments or new project investments. And that could open up opportunities for North American companies, but it would also present challenges for incumbent producers in other parts of the world, including Canada and the U.S. Gulf Coast.
You mentioned the investment and Venezuela not keeping up with that. And the U.S., Washington wants American oil firms to go in, reinvest in Venezuela. Do you see there being any stability anytime soon to do that, to operate there?
That's above my pay grade. It will depend on whether the United States has the ability to really affect regime and political change in Venezuela, and how much social turmoil the United States encounters from Mr. Maduro's hold on at least the poorer elements of Venezuelan societies. Note that between 6 and 8 million Venezuelans fled Venezuela over the last 20 years. So some of the groundswell of support that the United States may be counting on is a groundswell of support that's now resident in Texas or Colombia, Brazil or Panama.
Okay, we will take a quick break. We'll line up our first questions for Rick Rule of Rule Investment Media. Again, he's taking your questions on natural resource stocks. Here are the phone number and the email address to reach us today. We're back in just a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's start with an email from Scott. He has a question for Rick. He says, what does Rick think of Exxon Mobil, XOM, is the ticker? And I'm wondering, we have been looking at the oil stocks today. A lot of the American ones, Rick, are moving up on the idea, I guess, that down the road there could be more business drummed up in Venezuela, especially if they invest there. What do you think of Exxon Mobil? And has anything changed for you with the Venezuela situation in mind?
I've been a consistent bull on Exxon Mobil through all of 2025. Neither the upside nor the downside associated with Venezuela has anything to do with the call. I'm bullish about the oil and gas business over the next 5 years generally, and Exxon is the best deployer of capital among the global large caps. So I really, really like the name.
And we have it at 179, so just short of 180% up, up 2.3%. Would you invest at the level we're at today, 125.49?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, let's go to our first phone call then. Shelley is on the line in Toronto with a question. Hi, Shelley.
Oh, hey there, Miranda. Hi, Rick. I greatly admire your insight into the resources sector, and I believe you're a valuable resource to retail investors. My question is, in 2024, you recommended Mega Uranium, and do you still recommend the stock?
Okay.
And where do you
Shelley, nice to hear from you, and thank you for your kind words. I continue to hold Mega Uranium, and I suspect that it has more to follow. You may need to be patient with the uranium stocks. They've had a pretty good move through 2025, but I think the 5-year outlook for the high quality uranium stocks is very attractive, and I think Mega itself is one of the more attractive in the junior subset.
Why is that?
It is in effect a holding company. When you buy Mega, you get more than Mega. One could say that owning Mega, given its portfolio holdings, that you get the physical assets in Mega for free. There are, of course, in the near term, holding company discounts, but they tend to work themselves out over time. And I think that's precisely the circumstance with Mega. I think the sum of the parts is worth more than the price of the whole.
And they have assets or holdings, at least in Canada, as part of it, but Australia, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia as well?
That's correct. Okay. One could look at them as a sort of an operating closed-end fund for junior uranium exploration around the world.
All right. Okay, let's move to our next caller, Elliot, on the line in Hamilton, Ontario. Hi, Elliot.
Good afternoon. Spartan Delta Energy does not get referenced very often. Your thoughts, please.
Okay, Spartan, we will pull up here, Spartan Delta at $7.27 today, up over 100% over the last year. First, can you tell me a little bit about Spartan?
High quality. On the junior side, understand that if you're going into the low cap oil and gas business or the mid cap oil and gas business, you're taking more risks than you would in names like Exxon Mobil. But to the extent that you are patient, names like Spartan Delta are probably where the leverage is. I need to say I don't own it, but I do admire the people and admire the name.
Okay. Spartan is, again, up 67% over the last 5 years. Let's go to our next caller then. John in St. Catharines, Ontario. Hi, John.
Hi, Rick. I'd like to speak to you about the Rodney Dangerfield of gold miners, Orzone. 2022, it reached $1.90. Today, it's about $1.85 and on track to produce 175,000 ounces of gold. What would it take for you to invest in it?
Okay.
I don't own Orzone, as you suggest. I think the knock against Orzone has been a little trouble getting to nameplate capacity after finishing construction, but more probably due to the fact that they operate in Burkina Faso, a country that has had its own set of political challenges with Islamic fundamentalists, and has also flirted with increasing the social rents extracted from the mining business. So I think really what's facing Orzone has been political challenges. They're not alone. Companies that have some or the majority of their production coming from Burkina Faso have been companies that have lagged other gold mining companies in the market, Orzone being no exception. I go way, way, way back with the management team in Orzone, and I hold them in fairly high regard. I've known the property for a very long time. The current malaise in the market is understandable until we reach some sort of understanding as to where the political forces are in Burkina Faso with regards to the sanctity of existing contracts, a circumstance that at present is very much in flux.
Would you call it a sort of paralyzing, and how long has that been a force for this company in Burkina Faso?
Well, there's been a couple of challenges. One, of course, the political risk posed by active terrorist cells in the country. That problem goes back 5 or 6 years. Much more recently, the coup in Burkina Faso and the resetting of Burkina Faso's relationships with France has called into question the relationship that the government in Burkina Faso has with all foreign investors, but particularly Western foreign investors. There has also been an increasing embrace of Russian interests, replacing Western interests in terms of providing regime security. When this will resolve itself is a question bigger than I can answer.
Yeah, need the crystal ball for that one. Okay, let's squeeze in one more phone call before a break. Jack's on the line in Toronto. Hi, Jack.
Hi, thank you so much. I would like Rick's view on Sol Gold and everything that's happening with them right now. Is it a buy or a hold or neither?
Okay, thank you for the question. Sol Gold, tell me a little bit about it first.
Sol Gold is a company that's been around for sort of 20 years. They made were part of making a very profound discovery in Ecuador, a country that has its own political challenges, but it's a very large, very important copper gold deposit, porphyry deposit. Sol Gold recently has been subject to a takeover offer from its largest shareholder, which I suspect will work. Building copper gold porphyries in the Andes, particularly in places that are politically challenging, requires very, very deep pockets. And the potential acquirer, a Chinese company, has the overt backing of the Chinese state, and are likely the kind of company that enjoys both the political support in their home country, but also the financial support in their home country to make this work.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. We'll take a quick break. We'll take more phone calls and emails when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Market Call. We have Rick Rule with us today as our guest. We're going to the phone lines. John is in London, Ontario. He's got a question today. Hi, John. John, are you there? Okay, we may have lost him. His question was about Agnico Eagle, a very well-known company, of course, has done pretty well this year. I'm going to ask whether you would invest at the price it is at today. We'll pull up the line chart in just a moment.
For people who don't own it, yes, I think it's the finest operating gold mining company in the world. I have owned it for a very long time, and they are a featured presenter at my conference, so I have lots of conflicts of interest. But I think their track record as capital allocators over the last 15 years speaks for itself, and the production growth is absolutely baked in the cake for the next 5 years, so you don't have any kind of risk with regards to that.
So you see a lot of growth here?
I do. Importantly, not growth from new discoveries, but growth from existing assets that they already control and integration around existing infrastructure. Top quality gold name.
Okay, with the price of gold shooting up the way it has over the last year, some investors are waiting for a pullback, thinking maybe they can get in, spend a little less and get in. Do you think that's a possibility? If so, how much of a pullback would you wait for to put some money in?
I think it depends on what the rest of your portfolio looks like, which is to say, if you are already stocked up on gold and gold stocks, it absolutely might be prudent to wait before you add to your positions. If you don't have positions in physical gold and gold stocks, I think the writing's absolutely on the wall, and I would average into these things for portfolio protection, including at the current time.
Okay. Let's go to Mark then on the line. He's in Gatineau today with a question. Hi, Mark.
Oui, bonjour. Hi, Happy New Year and good health.
Merci.
Yeah, Rick, I'd like to have your thoughts on Denison Mines. I called you last summer back in July, if I recall correctly, and you didn't seem to understand the in situ process of mining underground at their project. Apparently, it's fairly simple, but there's always a risk to it that you might contaminate your underground water tables. So I'd like to have your thoughts on that. And by the way, I hold also Equinox Gold, one of your dear friend there, Ross Beatty, owns it. Been holding it since last summer at $7.90, if I recall correctly. Thank you kindly, and Happy New Year again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Mark. So I think he's talking about the Wheeler River project. Is that correct? Athabasca, Rick?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I like the collection of assets that is Denison Mines, in particular the permitted mill. Where I'm out to lunch a little bit is the efficacy of their underground in situ recovery. It hasn't been tried before. The gentleman refers to it as simple, perhaps simple in the lab, but I need to see it work on the ground. He is right to say I don't understand it. That has been my knock on the stock for 5 years, and the reason that I don't own it. If it works, it's an absolute game changer, both for Denison and particularly, and perhaps for the industry. But I really think that the jury is out in terms of how it works. By the way, I have a high regard for the company. I have a high regard for its people. Just too much of the net present value in Denison Mines is tied up in a technology that I don't understand and has never really been tried anywhere else before.
Okay, from what you do understand, what does that technology involve?
It involves using solvent extraction to recover uranium. That is tried in a lot of places, but much closer to surface. The idea that you could use solvent extraction in much deeper, much denser rocks is what has me a bit flummoxed. It hasn't, to my knowledge, ever been tried before in the uranium business, and it's had spotty success in other types of deposits, say copper deposits. So until I see it work, I don't have the courage to run net present value calculations on Denison.
All right, let's move on to another caller then. Tom's on the line. He's in Montreal with a question. Hi, Tom.
Hi, guys. First of all, Happy New Year. Rick, you're one of the best out there. I love the information you provide. I would like to ask you a simple question today. Elemental Royalty Corp. I own a little bit. I'm thinking of adding more. I believe the ticker is ELE on the CVE. Have a great day, guys, and I'll listen to you later.
Thank you for the question. So let's talk about, first of all, how do you feel about holding court? Do you tend to go more with the true stock, or do you also sort of dip into holding? What's your feel on those?
My preference is to be a fairly long-term investor, which is to say, if nothing goes wrong, I hold for a long time. And Elemental is a great example of that. I'm a founding shareholder of two of the constituents, Altus and EMX Royalty. Both prospect generators come royalty stocks. The merger of those companies, I think, has created a much stronger whole. And I would encourage any speculator in Canada, I say speculator, anybody who is willing to take the risks inherent in exploration, to consider adding Elemental to their portfolio. I think it's a lower risk way to participate in a very, very, very risky business. Please bear in mind, I am a very large shareholder, and I have been a shareholder for 20 years.
What drew you to it initially? Do you remember?
I'm sorry?
What drew you to it initially?
Well, in the case of Altus, it was pre-public. I liked their management team. I liked their focus on generative exploration in West Africa. In the case of EMX, I liked Dave Cole, one of the founders of the company, and I liked their exploration focus at that time on Eastern Europe. It's worth noting that the great Bor discoveries in Serbia really came out of the EMX-focused generative exploration. The march of the companies from pure prospect generation in both cases to prospect generation with a royalty overlay, I think, was well chosen and has been a success. They've, of course, been rewarded in the market for that success. But I would suggest that they are probably the finest of the tertiary, the smaller royalty companies.
Okay, good to know. Let's move on to another caller. Colin is in Sarnia, Ontario. Hi, Colin.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everybody. May everything be prosperous for everybody. My question about Northern Dynasty Minerals, I picked up a few tons in November when a certain person got elected. And I'm wondering if it will reach the high again that the crazy buying did, like $13, or whether it's going to float around this value based on their deposit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Colin. Northern Dynasty Minerals, gold, copper, a few other things, Rick?
I don't own Northern Dynasty. I should say that first of all. I think Northern Dynasty has a checkered past with regards to community relations. They've spent about $80 million at last count in a legal fight with a First Nations band that has 6,500 members. The opposition has spent $500,000 or $600,000. If Northern Dynasty gets their community relations chops in shape, and they can switch that 6,500 people from being opponents of theirs to allies of theirs, they have a wonderful opportunity with the Trump administration in terms of perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to permit this thing. But I need to see some movement on the ground in terms of community relations with the host First Nations before I buy the stock.
Okay. Colin, I hope that works for you. Let's take a quick break. We will come back with Rick's past picks. That's coming up next. Stay tuned. Time now to have a look at past picks from Rick Rule. These are from March 14th of 2025. I was going to say this year, but last year now. Rick, at the time, you chose a Sprott SII on the TSX. It was recommended at 61.23 at the time. Now it's up to 141.75. So 131% return and a total return of 134%. What did you like about Sprott at the time? Do you still hold it?
Well, first of all, I'm a former employer of Sprott, and I think I'm the largest shareholder of Sprott. So let's get bias out of the way. Sprott Inc. is a brand name for precious metals and natural resource investing. With over $60 billion US in assets under management, it is a go-to brand name. And in fact, it's a lower risk way to play the revival, particularly in gold, but in natural resources generally. Note, I'm saying this, not Sprott. If Sprott's growth continues, I see them going to $100 billion in AUM, which means their management fees increase much faster than their general and administrative expense rises, which means that earnings continue to gallop, which they have been over the last year. And I suspect that if the natural resource and precious metals bull market unfolds the way that I think it will over the next 3 or 4 years, that Sprott likely will be taken over by a larger financial services supermarket that wants a natural resources vertical and doesn't want to take the time to build one themselves. So I continue to be, I believe, the largest shareholder of Sprott.
All right. Let's move on to your next past pick, Meteoric Resources, MEI. At the time, we'll have a look, it was 7 cents. This is Australian, I believe, dollars. And now up to 18 cents, so 154% return. Same for total return. This is an Australian firm, I believe. Tell me a little bit more about what they do and what you like about them.
Meteoric owns about half of a very large and fairly high grade rare earths deposit in Brazil. Metallurgy is as yet uncertain. There has been some community opposition, which I believe that Meteoric has overcome. There isn't particularly offtake in place. If those challenges are met, Meteoric and a couple others in that part of Brazil go an awful long way to solving the Western world's problem with regards to rare earth supplies from China. Meteoric is the largest and one of the highest grade non-Chinese controlled heavy rare earth deposit on the planet, which is why I own it. It is extremely volatile, and the jury is still out, I would suggest, around extraction, permitting, and community support. I like it because of the extraordinary upside that it offers, but people need to pay attention to the fact that that comes with some downside exposure too.
Okay. Is there a timeline you've given for this investment?
They have done everything that I've asked them to do. I look at progress on all fronts. I look at the fact that they are increasingly overcoming their community challenges. They have done a great job with regards to test scale mining and processing. So as long as they continue to make progress, I'll continue to own the stock.
Okay, let's get to your third pick from last year in March, Meren Energy, MER on the TSX, which was Africa Oil, AOI on the TSX, $1.97 at the time you recommended it to $1.82 now, so 8% in drop return, but total return up 3%. Are you still in this one?
I am. I have about a third of my original position. I've been selling it because I owned the stock for two reasons. I owned it because it does and did sell at a substantial discount to the net present value of their assets. But I also hold it, or held it, pardon me, because I like their exploration upside. The entities that controlled the company, including the Lundin family, who I hold in very high regard, have chosen to return capital to shareholders as opposed to exploit the exploration upside that I saw in Nigeria. In effect, they're decapitalizing the company to do other things. There has been a normal course issuer bid in place, which normally I would be in favor of, given the fact that the company sells at an extraordinary discount to NAV. The fly in the ointment has been that the controlling shareholders, including the Lundin family, have been taking advantage of that normal course issuer bid, which is to say, selling some of their stock. I don't like going against management in circumstances like this. It would appear to me that the people behind the company would rather have their capital out than pay attention to what I consider to be the extraordinary exploration upside that presents itself in Nigeria. So I have been a seller of the stock.
Okay, good to know. Let's take a quick break. We will be back with Rick Rule and take more of your questions in just a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Market Call. Thanks for joining us. Let's go to Daniel. He's on the line in Markham, Ontario. He's got a question today for Rick. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Marilla. Hi, Rick. Great host and great guest.
Thank you.
My question is on Tourmaline Oil. Is Tourmaline your top-ranked Canadian natural gas company? And if not, is either ARC or Peyto or Birchcliff your top gas choice? Thank you for taking my call.
We're presuming, of course, you have a top choice in the Canadian natural gas play.
I do. ARC is my favorite Canadian oil and gas company, but I'm a large Tourmaline shareholder, and I like Tourmaline too. The fact that it finishes, in my mind, second to ARC is by no means criticism. The Tourmaline people have done a spectacular job. Their land holdings are second to none. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful company. I've known ARC management for a very long time, and I believe that ARC itself is probably the best run mid-tier oil company on the planet.
What's your outlook for natural gas in the current climate?
Well, that's a big topic. My outlook for natural gas globally is pretty good. My outlook for natural gas in Canada is a little less good. Despite some pronouncements to the contrary, it would appear that your prime minister doesn't like Canada's most efficient industry. And until we have some clarity over the fact that Canada would like to do something that does very well, one needs to be a bit concerned about the outlook for Canadian oil and gas. That said, the Canadian oil and gas equities are so cheap that I think they've overly discounted the hostility of your political class to your best industry.
Okay, so that being said, you know there's major projects operations underway, and there's been a memorandum of understanding on a pipeline, but you're not buying in on the positivity around energy in Canada right now?
No. When your prime minister says that all of his financial decisions will be made in the context of carbon, he's speaking loud and clear.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to our next caller. Then Ghulam's on the line in Toronto with a question. Hi, Ghulam.
Hi, good afternoon to you both. My question was on Fortuna Silver. I own some. I'm making a little bit of money. Is it time to sell now, or you see further upside? If I can also squeeze in W Gold Mines, see if I know you're familiar with that. What do you think of that stock? Okay. Appreciate your opinion.
Thank you for the question. Silver moved up dramatically over the last year following gold? Is there more upside for silver, or should there be a trim here?
I think there's more upside for Fortuna if somebody is willing to take the West African political risk. The company has made a pivot, a partial pivot from Latin America to West Africa, a pivot that I was afraid of 3 years ago, but they've pulled it off. I think within Fortuna, there's a lot of growth built in. So if you are willing to take the volatility in precious metals, and if you are willing to take the political as opposed to the operating risk in West Africa, which I am willing to do, you should consider continuing to hold Fortuna Silver. I don't know the name of the second company that the gentleman asked, so I have to pass on that question.
Got it. Okay. Let's go to our next caller then. Chad's on the line. He's in Saskatoon. Hi, Chad.
Good afternoon, Morella and Rick. Rick, my question is on Sprott's active gold and silvers miners ETF, GBUG. I haven't been able, or I wasn't able to get into the gold market or in the last year, but now I'm bullish on it, and I know that you are as well. Would you recommend this ETF? And I also own Amplify's SILJ, which is the Amplify's Junior Silver ETF. Would you recommend that one as well? I'll hang up and listen. Thank you very much.
I'm going to broaden this out into the ETF play for these metals, Rick, and your thoughts there.
Well, I need to say, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, I'm the largest shareholder of Sprott, so saying nice things about the ETFs is in my own interest. I think that Sprott is the largest and best providers of ETFs in the space, which is to say they offer the most intelligently constructed indexes. And over 5 years, I think those ETFs will outperform others in the class. Part of me needs to say that I don't own the ETFs because I do own the parent. If you own the parent, you participate indirectly in all of the products, all of the ETFs, and all of the trusts. In addition to that, rather than pay a management fee, you receive a dividend. So probably the most prudent thing to do is to do what I've done, rather than isolate yourself in the upside of a smaller sector. You can own the whole resource space and be paid a dividend rather than pay a fee by owning Sprott Inc., which is what I have done. Failing that, if you want representation in the sector without doing the work yourself to speculate, the Sprott ETFs are, I believe, the most intelligently constructed indexes in the resource ETF business.
Okay, I hope that works for the caller. Let's get to an email before we take a break. This is from Fab. He says, hello, Rick. Thank you for appearing on the show. You've recommended GTWO mining in the past. If you could, would you comment on it and specifically to its spin-off of its non-core holding? So this is G2 Goldfields. Rick, do you still like this play, or do you still hold it?
I do. I think G2 is taken over within a couple of years. I think the most likely candidate to take them over is G Mining, who is building a mine right across the property boundary, same mineralized event. With regards to the spinoff, I own it, but understand grassroots exploration is a highly, highly risky business. So for people who have patience, first of all, and can assume the risk of greenfield exploration, albeit in highly prospective terrain, there's a lot to be said about this. I don't know anything about the gentleman asking me the question, so I don't know whether or not holding the spinoff is efficacious for him or her.
Okay, let's take a quick break then. We'll come back with more phone calls and more emails for Rick Rule of Rule Investment Media. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. Let's go to the phone line. Robert is on the line in Montreal. Hi, Robert.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for taking my call. I own shares in Newfound Gold, and I'd be very, very interested in knowing what Rick thinks of the company. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Newfound Gold. I guess they focus on Newfoundland, Labrador. Tell me, do you know much about Newfound Gold?
I know a lot about Newfound. I have been a skeptic for years around Newfound. The deposit clearly will be economic. The question becomes at what scale. I'm increasingly attracted to it as the market cap has fallen and as they have done more work on the deposit. I see it as really a string of deposits that ends up being over the 1 million ounce threshold with centralized process facilities. I would note that my former mentor and partner, Eric Sprott, is the largest shareholder of Newfound Gold. And having a difference of opinion with Eric is often very hard on one's wallet. So while I'm attracted to it, newly attracted to it, because of the progress they've made and because of the share price declines that they've experienced and because of their recent merger, I don't own it yet.
Okay, but you are putting it on a list where you're watching it?
I am absolutely positively watching it. In fact, actively studying it.
Got it. Okay, let's get to an email from Dan out of Vancouver. He says, can you comment on Regulus Resources, a large copper gold project, and its management, please? Are you familiar with Regulus?
I am. I'm a fairly large Regulus shareholder. I've been a fairly large Regulus shareholder for a fairly long time. I talked about it actually on BNN 3-4 years ago. I'm very, very familiar with the management team. They've made me a lot of money in the last 20 years. There's a lot of work to do here. It's a big deposit. There have been in the past infrastructure challenges, which I think have been conquered. But understand, it's a long way between where they are and putting a great big copper porphyry into production. This is not one for the faint of heart. I'm not faint of heart, so I own a lot of it.
Okay, they have assets in Argentina, Peru, Chile, and the U.S. Where do you see the strongest growth?
The Peruvian asset is the asset that you have to look at if you really care about the company. They're an opportunistic management team. They can make something out of anything. But the Peruvian asset is the asset that drove me to the company.
Okay. Let's go to Matt. Matt's on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Matt.
Hi there. Rick, thank you for your sense of humor. You're always entertaining to watch. Question about Ivanhoe Mines. I'm pretty strong on copper going into the next year. I thought my max position after their flooding issue in Ivanhoe and built in. They keep running up. I'm just curious if I should keep adding to my position in Ivanhoe, even though I feel I'm maxed, but it keeps going. I want to build more, or should I move into something like Rio? Thank you, or some other option you offer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Matt. Ivanhoe, I've got it at 1666. Today, 1674 is where we have it on the chart right now. What would you do with Ivanhoe?
I don't know enough about Matt to tell him what to do. I'm a very large shareholder in Ivanhoe. Going back many, many years, my average cost is below $1 Canadian. So it's treated me very well. You need to be willing to take some political risk and a bit of operational risk. For those who don't know, the company had a seismic event followed by flooding in their primary producing asset, the Kakula deposit. They have handled the flooding, but in terms of the seismic event, it's going to be 6 months really before we understand the nature of that event. Meanwhile, they have record copper production. It's worth noting that they just turned on a smelter. They are also actively operating the highest grade big zinc mine in the world. And they very, very, very recently turned on a platinum, palladium, and nickel mine in South Africa. This is a major in the making. People who own it are willing to take the political risk inherent in Congo and South Africa, and they're willing to take some technical risk at Kakula. I happen to be one of those people. If investing in countries that don't offer the same degree of political stability that Canada does is problematic for people, they should avoid the company. I have been and remain a real fan of Robert Friedland, who is the founder and executive chairman of Ivanhoe. He has been the most serially successful mine financier of my generation, and he continues to be active in the company.
Okay, that was for Ivanhoe Mines. Let's move on to our next caller, John in Regina, with a question. Hi, John.
Hello, good afternoon. Rick, I know in the past you were a large shareholder of Orla, and I believe it's still currently one of Premwat's largest precious metals holding. My question is there more room to go on this stock, and if so, how much? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question.
I think there is more room in Orla, although I need to say I've sold 25% of my position. By doing so, I recouped all of my cost in the position, and I paid tax. I managed to pay the capital gains tax for getting myself to the point of no concern. So while I consider the name to be a fairly attractive name, I need to say that at least for a quarter of my holdings, they overcame every level of greed I had.
Okay, Orla Mining is where we're going to have to end the phone calls right now. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will have a look at new top picks from Rick. We're back in a moment. Join us tomorrow on Market Call. Matt Kaser will be on the show, president of FSA Valuation Service. He'll take your questions on North American equities. That's tomorrow. And if you missed Market Call, you can check out our daily podcast. Find it on iHeartRadio and other platforms. You can also watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. Let's get to new top picks from Rick Rule. We're going to start with B2 Gold, BTO on the TSX. This is a company that has global operations. What do you like about B2 Gold, Rick?
The price. B2 has been punished, because of the Fekola mine in Mali, which they have experienced some political risk at. But I note that unlike Barrick, Clive Johnson went immediately to Mali, solved his problem with the leadership in Mali very quietly off the screen. No drama, unlike some other companies there. But the big news has been their Canadian operations. They were behind schedule and well over budget. That mine has now come in. It'll be probably 6 months shaking out. If they make that mine work, which I believe they will, I think that you'll see the same sort of performance in B2 that you saw in Equinox, a company that also sold off as a consequence of budget overruns and delays building a large mine in Eastern Canada. The fact that they have successfully completed that mine is a wonderful testimony to the mine building team at B2. If you look at that team and you look at their operations in B2 and in the predecessor to B2, Bema, that team has now completed successfully 8 builds in disparate parts of the world. Very, very high quality company, very, very high quality management team. A lot of skepticism in the market around their Canadian operation and around their global aspirations, including in Colombia. I hold their management team in very high regard, and I think the stock is really, really, really going to re-rate as the Canadian operations attain nameplate capacity.
Okay, you are still a believer for B2 Gold on the TSX. Let's move to your next pick, which is Amerigo Resources, ARG on the TSX. This is, I guess, an investment in copper, and I'm wondering if it's already spiked up as a result of that play. There we go, it has, and you'd still put money in.
I think it has spiked up, and I think it has more room to go. They have very, very, very large copper resources, and unusual resources, which is to say access to the tailings of one of the great copper mines in the world. So they will be able to produce at current levels for decades. They pay a very, very, very handsome dividend, and they really don't have to explore. There is some upside, however, in that their tailings processing capabilities are highly regarded, and I believe that they are in discussions, preliminary discussions, to acquire another tailings opportunity. Whether this occurs or doesn't occur, I feel very, very, very good about the copper business for the next 5 years, and I feel particularly good about companies that can generate very high margins and pay very high dividends at these prices, because I think the prices are going to go up. Assuming that your timing is off a little bit, which is to say, assuming that copper takes longer than people think to trade materially higher, understand that Amerigo pays you a very healthy dividend while you wait.
All right, good to know. Let's move to your last pick then. SLBNV on the New York Stock Exchange. They're an oil field services company. I was looking it up, and they've already moved up today, perhaps on the situation with Venezuela. But why have you chosen SLB?
I liked Schlumberger before the Venezuelan adventure. because I think that oil and gas is deeply out of favor, and because the oil industry itself admits underinvesting between $1 and $2 billion a day in sustaining capital investments worldwide. This underinvestment needs to be made up in the next 5 years. To the extent that the opportunity in Venezuela actually presents itself, I suspect that one of the prime beneficiaries will be the oilfield services companies, and I think the Schlumberger is probably the best positioned to take advantage of that. But make no mistake, with or without Venezuela, I'm a real supporter of Schlumberger.
And where do they operate? Do they already have a foothold in that part of the world?
Well, worldwide. In terms of wireline logging, you can't do business on a global basis without doing business in Schlumberger. They're in a lot of different applications, but they have been for my entire adult life, which is to say for 50 years, the world leader in technology around wireline logging.
Okay, we do have to leave it there. Rick Rule, sir, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today on Market Call. We'll see you back here again tomorrow.